Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Professor Will, your Director of Training here at Chllc Holdings, LLC. And today we're going to do something just a little bit different. We've been doing this channel now for just shy of 2 years. We've got 50 plus videos on the channel. And I get questions just about every video we do. We get it on the DMs. We get it on the different social media platforms. We get it through our email at chllcholdingsllc@gmail.com. And I've noticed a little pattern. I get the same questions from people over and over again. So today, instead of showing you some type of different techniques or some different thought processes on training, we're going to answer some of those questions. A little Q&A. Check it out. So it's no secret that we train a lot of stuff here at Chllc Holdings LLC. But the basis of just about everything we do is jiu-jitsu. And the question that I get frequently is, why jiu-jitsu? I like it. I enjoy it. And since I'm the one that gets to teach it, that's the first thing. Nobody's going to teach or train what they don't like to do. So I enjoy jiu-jitsu. I've enjoyed jiu-jitsu since 1994, whenever we founded. And I'm a big fan of the philosophy of this style of jiu-jitsu training. I'm a big fan of the fact, especially for my day job, the fact that I can learn to control somebody without resorting to striking, without resorting to things that could push into an excessive force issue. And there's tons of anecdotal evidence out there you can find on the internet that will show you somebody using jiu-jitsu that actually just grab somebody, put them on the floor, and hold them there until help arrives without hurting them or causing them actual physical damage. It allows us to learn to mitigate how much of that damage we put on, what's necessary, what's actually needed, and how we do it. When I learned traditional martial arts, we would learn we're going to block, we're going to hit, we're going to hit, we're going to hit, we're going to hit this elbow, we're going to hit this knee. It's kind of like some of the Master Ken skits on the end of the dojo you see. And if you look at that in its reality, it's a thin line. We wrote a blog about this. There's a thin line between self-defense and assault. And with jiu-jitsu, we train, get a hold of him, and control him. Whether we put him on the ground, whether we stand him up, it doesn't matter. I can control him standing up just as well as I can on the ground. I just don't have that extra person of the ground itself to help push him against. And we can always learn to help do things better, but using jiu-jitsu, we learn to control things without necessarily having to add this element into it. And that's one of the reasons we love training the jiu-jitsu. We haven't done these questions in any particular order, but usually the second biggest question that we see is, how long does it take me to get proficient at self-defense, martial arts, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, whatever you want? We see that a lot. How often does it take me to get good doing this? And I hate to sound flip, but that really depends on you. There's a lot that goes into it on your physical abilities, on your physical attributes, but it also has to do with your mindset. How often are you going to put into training? Are you going to train 2-3 days a week? You're going to train 1 day a week. It makes a huge difference. We used to call it martial arts math. If you took somebody that trained just twice a week, and there's 4 weeks in a month, well, then he trained 2, 4, 6, 8 times that month. If you trained 3 times, that's 3. If you trained 3 times that week, then you've got 3, 6, 9, 12 times. So the guy who's trained 8 times versus the guy that's trained 12 times, you're going to see that guy who's trained 12 times, as long as he's getting good training, is going to get better faster because he's getting more. How good are you at your job? You spend a lot of time doing your job? I don't care what you are. If you're an accountant, how long did you spend training to be an accountant? Do you have continuing education that you have to do? How often do you do that? Are you one of those people who turns your continuing education on your phone and goes about doing your job and just lets it run? You're not really paying attention to it? Or are you actually watching it, learning the updates for whatever happens for that accounting job? The guy who does becomes a better accountant. Martial arts is the same way. It's no different. So if you can put quality training in. I watch guys that come in, and I watched the guy that I trained for years that would come in and shadow box, and he would always shadow box just like this. That's literally how he shadow boxed. And then he was shocked when, even though he was taller than other people and had better reach, they would outbox him. And it blew his mind. Man, they're just so much better. No, you've got a crappy training style because you're training yourself to cut short punches. Because if this is how you're training and you're putting that mental cortex constantly in that short punch style, what do you think happens when you're hitting pads and you're actually hitting people that are hitting back? You're still punching that way. It's horrible. It wasn't good training, so he didn't get good results out of it. It's the old computer saying, my brother likes to say, garbage in, garbage out. This was garbage versus somebody that was actually throwing good technique and reaching the punches without overreaching. And it blew his mind when people were getting better than him because he had bad training. So get good training and get good training often as you can fit it into your schedule. That's the key. And you'll find you get better pretty quick. So another question that I get a lot of is gi or no gi? Which one should I train? Should I train with a gi on? Should I train without a gi on? And the answer is yes, you should do both. Training in the gi is not quite as fast of a game, but there's a lot more handles. There's a lot more pressure to deal with because if I'm wearing the gi, they can grip onto me. I'm worried about chokes. I've got to worry about the grabbing the pants. It's harder to move my leg out of the way. It can be harder to just move around, period. There's more friction between us because the gis hit each other and stick and rub. And you have to be more technical, in my opinion, in a gi. No gi is a very fast game. It's very slippery. You're dealing more with the sweat than you are if you have a gi because the gi will collect that sweat. And it's not quite as technical because of that speed. I like beginners to train in a gi because it gives you the technicality. As you get better in the gi, then we start to kind of take the kimono top off, train that way, then you go just a pair of shorts, train that way, and you learn these things. Because if you're nothing but gi, and you're used to those handles and stuff that you might develop, and then you go train no gi, well, obviously you've got a problem when you go to do a gi choke, and there's no gi there. So you have to learn how to work that, maybe grab the trap. There's a way to do that we teach as well. But for me, I like using both. Now, as I've gotten older, I'll take with some of the students when I train, and they're doing no gi, and I'll leave my gi on because it gives them an advantage, makes it harder for me. And I like that because I like to train at a disadvantage as often as possible because it just makes me better. So do you train gi or do you train no gi? Yes, train them both. Hard on the heels of the gi or no gi question is we always get, hey, should I do tournaments? Should I not do tournaments? And again, the answer is that ubiquitous yes. Do a tournament. If you want to do tournaments, you like to do tournaments. I've done one or two. I'm not a fan. Just like with competitive shooting, I found that guys would go from the tactical version to competitive version very quickly. There's rules that you have to follow when you're doing competitive shooting. And I would watch guys that would train it, and then they would come into a tactical situation when we were clearing houses or whatever, and they would still have the barrel pointed a specific direction instead of where it needed to be because they'd gotten so used to that training type. Or they would sit there with their equipment set up a certain way to make the competition faster, to make reloads and such, and they didn't do enough training on the tactical side with the equipment on their belt, and they couldn't find it. That's dangerous not only for them, but for the rest of us involved in their team as well. Martial arts tournaments become the same way. You'll find guys that when you're grappling, and they'll look at me and go, hey, you can't grip the gi this way because that's not allowed in a tournament. I don't care about a tournament. I grip the gi how I want because that's a self-defense issue, and I'm looking at it from a different perspective. So as long as you do a tournament and you can keep it in perspective on your training, that's cool. The problem is it becomes hard to do so because when you're doing a tournament, there are specific rules, there are specific ways you can do things that aren't conducive in the self-defense realm, and you end up training for that. The second thing about tournaments, whether you do them or don't do them, is are you having fun? My friend Brent Pierce, God love him, created Combat Concepts and Team Rock, and he was fond of saying he was a fight promoter back in the 90s and early 2000s. And Brent was fond of telling the guys, if you don't enjoy this, don't do this ever again. If you get in here on this fight, whether you win or lose, and you're not having fun, don't come back and do another one of these things because you're only doing yourself a disservice. I feel tournaments are the same way. I didn't really enjoy the tournaments, so I don't do them. I had a friend named Tom. Tom trained in Charlottesville with some guys. He did did one tournament, didn't really enjoy it. It was an interesting aspect of jiu-jitsu for him, but he didn't really enjoy doing the tournament, so he didn't do any more. Cool, more power to you. I don't look down on tournaments. I don't look down on people that do tournaments. I don't look down on people that train tournament jiu-jitsu or sport jiu-jitsu, whatever you want to call it. More power to you. Knock yourself out. Do what makes you happy. Just don't expect the rest of us to follow suit because that's what you like. Just like I don't expect you to train self-defense jiu-jitsu just because that's what I like. So should I do tournaments? I think it's a good idea. Jason Colbert, the black belt in North Carolina, is fond of saying everybody should do at least one or two to understand the pressure that you're under when you're working those. Because I can tell you, when you come to do our black belt test, you're going to walk into a room full of people who are all standing there looking at you to prove you belong in that room. And if the first time you've ever experienced that kind of pressure is in that room, you're probably not going to make it. We'll see you next time. Tournaments, in Jason's mindset, helps you learn and deal with that pressure. There's something to be said for that. So, should you do them? Should you not do them? Answer is yes. Do them, don't do them, knock yourself out. Another one of the big questions we get a lot is, am I too old to start doing jiu-jitsu? What age should I start? What age should I start my children, etc., etc., etc.? The big thing that I get, especially because all of our stuff is almost exclusively adult-oriented, is they look at me and say, man, I'm too old. I'm in my 30s. I'm in my 40s. I'm in my 50s. So what? Come train jiu-jitsu. The most important day of jiu-jitsu is the day you walk in and start. It's the biggest part about it. Walk in and do it. It doesn't matter what fitness level you are. It doesn't matter how much training you have previously. It doesn't matter how athletic you are or aren't. Come in and do it. Make that mental decision. Step in, step on the mat, start having fun. You can start training jiu-jitsu at any age. It's one of the beauties of it. And if you've got the right instructor, you're not going to be one of these people who's in here constantly hurt, constantly injured because the training progression is correct. Train. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how young you are, get in and do it. So hard on the heels of, am I too old to start question, is usually the one about how long does it take to get a black belt? Again, there's a lot of you in that answer. How often do you get to train? How long you can train? What are your goals? Are you trying to be the best guy in the mat? Are you a hobbyist? You're just there to get good self-defense. You're there to get good physical training. You're there to get in good shape. All that kind of plays a role in that. I know for the longest time it was 10 years was the minimum it was taking. I can also tell you that for many, many years, when we first started doing jiu-jitsu, we had to drive 4 hours one way. So that's an 8-hour round trip to get 1, 2, maybe 3 hours of training if we were lucky to find jiu-jitsu and the other arts that we were working at the time. There just weren't that many people. And that guy was a blue belt, very good blue belt, but there weren't hardly any black belts around. In the 90s, it was very hard to find a black belt, let alone get to train underneath one on a consistent basis where we are. And that was pretty much true across the country. There was only a handful of people in the early 90s that were black belts in jiu-jitsu. So there was a lot of work involved in it. It took a long time because you only got to train with that black belt once, maybe twice a month if we were really lucky. Nowadays, there's jiu-jitsu black belts everywhere. So you get much faster, much better access to the black belt to fix your technical problems, to answer your questions, to do these promotions a lot faster than we used to. And while for a lot of organizations, 10 years is still kind of the norm, I think you're going to see that change in the next several years. I'm not really sure that's a good thing. We've seen what happens in other arts when it took you 10 years, and then you got better access to black belts, so it started taking 8 years and then 5 years, and then all of a sudden it became a business thing, and now you can go and get a black belt at certain martial arts schools in 8 months. From the day you walk in to the day you wear a black belt, 8 months. How good is that? I don't care how flashy or how fast or how athletic that person is. You can't walk into a college on day one as a day one freshman and 8 months later walk out with a bachelor's degree. Doesn't happen. But we do it in martial arts and think, oh yeah, that's perfect. It's great. It's fine. No. I think it will get faster in jiu-jitsu because of the access to better training, more black belts out there. So you're not having to drive 8 hours round trip just to do an hour of training. So I think it will get faster, but that shouldn't be the focus in the first place. Focus on getting better, focus on learning better, and focus on your self-defense. Everything else will fall into place. So how long does it take to get a black belt? Good question. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I wanted to do something just a little bit different and answer some of these questions that I get on a consistent basis every time we put out a video or a new blog post. If you've got questions, feel free to send them to me, centurionholdingsllc@gmail.com. You can always contact us on our website, centurionholdingsllc.net. You can find us on all of your favorite social media platforms. For almost all of those, that's Centurion Holdings LLC. And I got something new for you today. In our last video, I showed you, while we were doing footwork and I was doing the circle footwork, and I showed you a set of Thigh pads from Chllc. And I got some questions on those. Those things are fantastic. Boomer makes great products. He's got shorts, he's got gloves, he's got packages for your training or for coaching. He's got belly pads, he's got thigh pads for if you're coaching, or you want to go thigh pads that you and your partner can really unload and train leg kicks. You can buy those from him. And he's given us a discount code. So when you go to ToroBJJ.com, you'll find the Cage Side Fight products. There's a link in the description below that gives that code, or during checkout when it asks for the coupon code, put in Dorset, and that'll give you 10% off of your entire order. Appreciate Boomer doing that for us. Hope you guys get some good equipment from him. His equipment is great, and I love that stuff. Follow that, use code Dorset to get 10% off your order there at Cage Side and Toro BJJ. His gis are fantastic. It's like wearing a pair of pajamas. I love those things. Buy his gis too. So go to ToroBJJ.com, get yourself some new gis, get yourself some new shirts, get yourself some new fight equipment from Cage Side. Hit the QR code right there, and we'll see you next time.